Now, while the Battle of Salamis was a decisive defeat for the Persian navy, we do have to remember that the Persians still retain a formidable army that is occupying Athens and the Attic Peninsula. It is still a very dangerous situation for the Greeks. And initially, Xerxes, despite watching this crushing defeat of his navy, Xerxes does not want to throw in the towel. He huddles with his advisors, as they come up with Plan B, what to do next. And Xerxes actually orders his military engineers to begin building a causeway from the Attic Peninsula here to the island of Salamis here. He wants to connect the two and march his army onto Salamis and kill everybody on the island. But that turns out to be a non-starter. And his advisors ultimately convince Xerxes that the best course of action is for the great king to leave the immediate campaign area and head back to the provincial capital of Sardis there in Turkey. So Xerxes agrees, and he also agrees that this is not over. And he likes a plan formulated by his leading advisor and his cousin, a Persian noble named Mardonius. Now, Mardonius had been a war hawk for quite a while. You may remember a couple of video lectures ago when I first started to describe Xerxes and his attempt to put together an invasion force. And initially, he's hesitant as to whether or not he should even go through with this invasion. And he's convinced by his advisors, his advisor, to go ahead with this. And that advisor was none other than his cousin Mardonius, who now steps onto center stage. And we might imagine Mardonius is feeling a little under the gun because he actually, convinced the great king to take part in this invasion, and things have not turned out well so far. So Mardonius needs a game changer. He needs to do something to turn the dynamic around, and he comes up with a plan by which the great king and most of the army will evacuate Greece. Remember, winter is coming. It is going to be very difficult to supply an enormous Persian army with the scarce resources available in Greece. So Mardonius asks Xerxes, leave behind an army commanded by myself and let me choose the troops that I want. So this will be like an elite strike force. And Xerxes says, yeah, okay, that'll work. And Mardonius goes ahead and puts together an army that is in many ways, even though it's smaller than the original Persian force, is much more dangerous because it is leaner, it is meaner, it is made up of elite units like the Persian immortals that were much feared by all who opposed them. This was a group of 10,000 warriors who were hand-picked for their fighting ability. So Mardonius takes them and a lot of other very, very good units. And he'll have, when all is said and done, an army of over 150,000. And this is still an enormous force. And amongst the contingents in Mardonius's army are the Thebans. The Thebans inhabit the city-state of Thebes in the region of Boeotia, and the Thebans have Medes. They have gone over to the Persian side. And so Mardonius has a base of operations that he can spend the winter. He can spend it in Boeotia, and this smaller army of Mardonius will be able to be supplied throughout the winter. And he can wait and pick his moment to hopefully destroy the Greek alliance, the Hellenic League. And so that's the plan. And it's important now to remember that Greece is still in a great deal of danger from the Persian invader. Even though Xerxes has evacuated the premises, there's still a very major threat hanging over the Greeks. Now, the Greeks, of course, flush with victory after Salamis, realizing that the Persians aren't going to go away entirely, decide that they will confront this threat. And the Greeks themselves will gather the largest army that they have ever fielded in all of their history, and it's around about 100,000 all told, Greeks, hoplites, and others. You can see in black text here I have about 39,000 hoplites. Those are the guys that fight with all the gear, the Corinthian helmet and the hoplon and the greaves and the corslet and the killing spear. But in addition to these 39,000 hoplites, the Greeks are also going to put into the field almost 70,000 other troops, light infantry, who don't have all the full panoply of hoplite equipment, but can still do some damage against an enemy. So again, this is going to be a big deal. The only issue left to ascertain is when will the battle take place. Well, at Plataea, as I mentioned, you get the largest army that the Greeks put into the field, and here you can see from this chart the Spartans will field a huge amount of hoplites, and for every one of those hoplites we can imagine each hoplite having 3 helot attendants who would also fight if push came to shove. So the Spartans will field the largest contingent, followed by the Athenians and then the Corinthians, and then the numbers begin to go down. But I wanted to show you this chart to remind you that this is still very much a joint Greek effort. Certainly the Spartans are in the lead, but if a city-state could contribute troops, it would. Now, commanding this vast Greek army is the Spartan regent Pausanias. You may remember King Leonidas, who was killed at Thermopylae. He had a son who would then become king, but the son was just a young boy, unable to govern on his own. So the Spartans appointed Pausanias, who was a kinsman of Leonidas. Pausanias was a regent, and a regent is just a political official who will advise the boy king, but during times of crisis the regent basically takes control of the situation, and so Pausanias is in command. Now, this battle, like the others that we've looked at, actually begins after a long period of stalemate in which both sides kind of stare at each other and size each other up and determine when the best opportunity to fight will be. And this goes on for quite a while. Now, this map will indicate the sequence, the opening sequence of the battle. Now, initially, the Greek position is down here. The Persian camp is up here. And of course, both sides are concerned with maintaining a supply of fresh water. So the Persians will camp out along the banks of the Asopus River here, and the Asopus has 2 springs that feed from it. And what we'll see is the Greek position down here initially. And you can see, I believe, 3 different color bars. This is a united phalanx, but it's made up of 3 separate contingents. The purplish color here on the right is made up of Spartans and their immediate allies. And the right of the phalanx, the right of the line, was always the place of honor. And so the Spartans will take that place of honor for themselves. In the center of the phalanx are other Greeks, those lesser Greek city-states that contribute a couple of hundred men here, a couple of hundred men there. And then on the left, which is the other important position, are the Athenians. So this is the Greek position, and again, there's a lot of staring down at one another. And then finally Mardonius decides to test the resolve of the Greeks, and he sends out a cavalry force led by a very flamboyant Persian noble who is dressed all in gold chainmail. He's got this kind of mesh armor suit, and the raid does not go well, and this Persian nobleman in the gold armor is killed. And the Greeks recover his body, and they actually display it as a type of trophy. And I mention this because it sets the stage for the next phase of the battle, because now the Greeks, having won this brief skirmish, decide that maybe we need a more aggressive posture. And so the Greek position then moves northward to be closer to the Persians. So that's what this black arrow indicates. So now we have a relocation of the Greek position. And the Greeks are relying on this spring now for fresh water. Well, Mardonius is not one to give up after losing a skirmish. He continues to send out Persian horsemen, Persian cavalry, who continue these hit and run raids. And one of these raids actually manages to capture the spring area where the Greeks are drawing their water, and the Persians do all they can to foul the water, make it undrinkable. And they do. They make it undrinkable, and that's now a problem for the Greeks because you need fresh water. So it is decided by Pausanias to retreat back more or less towards their original position where they can draw water from here. And this is going to be tricky, though, because in daytime, if you retreat in the face of the enemy, you're asking for trouble. So the only alternative is a night retreat, and this, of course, is very risky. But Pausanias feels he has no other course of action. So a night retreat is ordered. But when dawn breaks, the Persians are going to awaken not to a unified Greek line, but to a fragmented, disorganized Greek army. And that is because the retreat has not gone well. The Athenians wind up over here. The other Greeks wind up outside the city-state of Plataea, outside the walls of the city-state. And the Spartans wind up over here. So you can see what had once been a unified phalanx is now divided into the various contingents. Mardonius is no fool. He senses an opportunity and he orders a full court press. He orders his army to mobilize immediately, and the battle is joined. And again, it is a very favorable opening scenario for the Persians. Now, the Athenians are going to have to contend with the Thebans, those Medizing Greeks who fight in a phalanx formation. So this turns into a classical kind of hoplite battle between two sets of Greeks. And it's basically a stalemate for much of the battle. The other Greeks are going to be assaulted by some Persians and some other allied forces. They're going to barely hang on. But it will be the Spartans who will bear the brunt of the fighting, as Mardonius knows that he's going to have to break. If he breaks the Spartans, game over. He will have achieved the victory he has been looking for, and he will have all the glory he could ever dream of. So it's a full court press against the Spartans, and the Spartans, even though they are the most formidable warriors in all of Greece, are hard pressed to hang on. Now the battle comes to a head when Mardonius, sensing that it is the decisive moment, actually jumps on his horse and, accompanied by his immediate personal bodyguard, joins the fray. And in this painting you see him located right here. And it is a big mistake. As Mardonius, as conspicuous as he is in his armor and his horse, he becomes a target for all the Spartans. And one Spartan in particular, the historian Plutarch tells us, a Spartan named Arimnestos, who, having broken his spear and lost his sword, has no other weapon but to pick up a rock. And he picks up a pretty good-sized rock and hurls it with all of his strength. And the rock, so happens, it hits Mardonius in the side of the head, fractures his skull, and knocks him from his horse. And this is a big deal because in ancient times, when your leader, when your general goes down right in front of you, immediately morale is shattered. And that's exactly what happens to the Persians. They watched the great Mardonius, who was a charismatic figure, second to none. They watch him bite the dust, and immediately the fight goes out of the Persians, and they begin retreating, fleeing from the battlefield. So, with the victory at Plataea, the Persians are vanquished and Greece is free. And Herodotus, in his description of the aftermath of the battle, really does shape a image of what is Greek and what is Persian. One is civilized, the other is barbarian. In brief, he has two instances, both regarding Pausanias. In the first, a Greek warrior comes up to Pausanias first to congratulate him, but then suggests that they find Mardonius's body and then impale it on a stick and let it rot in the sun. And the Greek reminds Pausanias that that's exactly what the Persians did to the body of Leonidas at Thermopylae. And indeed, Xerxes did have Leonidas' body decapitated, and he stuck the head on a stake. And so it would be turnabout is all fair play here from the Greeks' perspective, but Pausanias again chooses the more noble path, and in essence he says what you suggest would be more fitting for barbarians than for Greeks, and even in barbarians it would be detestable. So Pausanias is not about to go the low road and seek vengeance on the body of Mardonius. Now, in the second case, after the Persians have cleared out, they've retreated in such haste that they've left behind all of the tents and the baggage of their camp, and in the tent of Mardonius, Pausanias, when he tours the area, he walks into the tent of Mardonius, and there is set an elaborate banquet, which Mardonius probably thought he would be enjoying at that very moment for a victory feast. But the Greeks are amazed when they look at all the ornate, all the fixtures and the tableware, and just all the wealth and opulence that is on display at the tent of a Persian noble. He's not even the great king. And so Pausanias takes the moment to have his fellow Greeks look around, and then he notes that a meal is being prepared in the Spartan fashion. And of course, Spartan meals were always let's just say they weren't very appetizing. They were always stripped down and very plain food. And so Pausanias draws the distinction, and he alerts his fellow Greeks to this distinction. And he notes, what kind of people are these Persians who want to come into our land and rob us basically of our poverty? What type of insatiable imperialists have we confronted and saved ourselves from? So, again, there are two kind of contrasts that Herodotus draws. The Persians as barbaric, cutting the head off of a dead Greek hero, and also, again, this insatiability and this kind of fixation on wealth and luxury that exemplified in the Greek mind. It exemplified what the Persians were all about. So again, very striking contrasts. Now, the action, though, is not quite over because while all the drama was taking place on mainland Greece at Plataea, another Greek force was on the sail. This force was a naval expedition made up of triremes and hoplites that were acting as sort of marines. And what the Greeks did, supposedly around the same time as the Battle of Plataea was being fought, they sail to this area here, the coastal area of Ionia, to an area called Mount Mycale. And at Mycale, the Greeks find what is left of the battered Persian fleet that had fled after the Battle of Salamis. And this is not the full fleet, but it was a significant portion of it. And so the Greeks, they go right on the attack. They beach their triremes, they land the ships, and everybody gets out and forms up into phalanxes and begins assaulting the camp of the Persians. The Persians had drawn a palisade around their beached ships, and the Greeks immediately attack it and wind up destroying what's left of the Persian fleet, burning it, and certainly inflicting many more casualties on the Persians. Now, the location is significant because now we are seeing the Greeks go on the offensive, and once they arrive in Ionia, they do begin to think about how do we free our kin here, the Ionians? How do we free them from Persian oppression? And furthermore, how do we safeguard ourselves from not having a repeat of what we've just been through, of the Persians gathering, maybe another 5 years, 10 years, but gathering another army and marching back into our neighborhoods. So the victory at Mycale really gets a discussion started as to what should we do next. And you better believe with these victories at Salamis, at Plataea, at Mycale, the Greeks are feeling supremely self-confident and are thinking they are every bit superior to the Persians. And this will set up a kind of golden age back in mainland Greece, certainly in Athens, in which the self-confidence will spill over into one of the most creative ages in the history of the world, in all sorts of artistic forms and in political forms also. But it will also involve the Greeks far from their homeland, and will get them into Ionia and beyond. And along the way, it will ultimately, from the pinnacle of power, bring the Greeks down as they once again will fight amongst themselves. But that is in the next half of the course, when we begin looking at the circumstances leading up to the Golden Age and ultimately the conflict known as the Peloponnesian War, in which Athens and its allies will fight a 27-year-long conflict against Sparta and its allies. But for the moment, the Greeks are basking in the glory of unambiguous victory, and are willing to extend their gains into Ionia and perhaps beyond.